So let's dig into that effortful versus automatic processing a little bit more with some slightly different terms. I have the terms explicit and implicit memory here. So when we talk about explicit memory, these are things that we can like consciously know and we declare that we know them. Like a lot of times like basic bits of information fit in this category, right? So the fact that I can tell you that the prefrontal cortex um, is problem solving, decision making, emotional regulation, your ability to pay attention to detail, the fact that I can tell you your occipital lobe primary deals with visual processing and your temporal lobe is memory and hearing, um, right? The fact that I can tell you those things, that is explicit bits of memory, right? I know what the 17th Amendment did, the 26th Amendment did, right? The 25th Amendment. I can tell you all the amendments, right? That's explicit memory. I encoded that through effortful processing, right? Through lots and lots of practice and recall and making bits of connections and using mnemonic devices, right? But now I know that, right? This is the stuff that I try to remember, right? So that process that we just talked about with the effortful processing, most of your explicit memory is effortful, right? On the other side of that, your implicit memory a lot of times is correlated or corresponds with your automatic processing, right? These are things that skip that conscious encoding process and they just jump right to storage. Okay, we don't work to put them there, but somehow they just get there, right? So, in our next unit, we're going to talk about classical conditioning. But if we just remember real quickly about the study of Pavlov and the dog, right? So, there was the tone, the food, the salivation, the tone, the food, the salivation, the tone, the food, the salivation. Eventually, the dog started to salivate to the sound of the tone, and food didn't have to be presented. The dog didn't have to work to say, "Ooh, you should start salivating when you hear a tone," right? That automatically happened to that dog. Okay. Also, things typically related to time, to space, to frequency. That stuff is implicit as well. Okay. So, right, stuff we consciously encode, it's effortful versus the things that we automatically encode. Okay. With that, I want to go over a couple other little types of memory with you here. I almost forgot this one. Procedural memory. So this is your capacity to do things. It's important to note that typically procedural memory is encoded through effortful processing. You have to work really hard to learn how to do something, but eventually it becomes implicitly recalled. So for example, when you are first learning how to drive, this is a really difficult task. You have to pay attention to everything. How does your foot feel on the brake, on the gas pedal, on the clutch if you're driving a stick shift, right? How does your hand feel if you have to shift or change gears on that stick shift, or even if you're in an automatic and you're just moving from park to reverse? Where do you put your hands? How do you turn your hands, right? How do you look to check your blind side? All of that is really, really skilled. But eventually, once you've been driving for a really long time, right? I've been driving since I was 16 years old. I'm 42, right? There are times I get from point A to point B, and I don't 100% necessarily remember getting there because I'm kind of on autopilot. Not always safe, but it is the truth. Um, if you play an instrument, right? It was probably really hard to play that instrument, but now you can pick up your instrument and you can play it, um, and not as much thought has to come into recalling how to do that. Okay, so something to think about. Okay, last few little bits of information or types of memory that I want you to learn, and then I'm going to do one more task with you. Okay, so, so I just kind of threw this in here, right? But these are types of memory that you need to know. So episodic memory is your personal information or your experiences that you've had over your life. So for example, me telling you the story of walking into the bathroom on one of my best friend's dads, it was kind of an experience for me. Okay. Anytime I tell you some general story that I remember, from my past as a teenager or with my children, that is episodic memory. Okay. Me telling you that my name is Tracy and that I was born in Washington, D.C., and my parents' names are Kathy and Bill, right? Those are my personal bits of information. Okay. That's episodic. Semantic are general facts that you have knowledge, right? So when I talk about the fact that the First Amendment protects your right to religious freedom, assembly, press, petition, speech, right? That is a general fact, right? The first president of the United States was George Washington. Okay, that's that bit of information. So episodic is more about my personal experiences, my personal information. Semantic memory is about general bits of information, okay, that aren't personal to me. Okay, separate from that, we've got declarative and then procedural. I talked about procedural on the previous slide, right? Procedural is the way that we do things. When we get into our biology unit, we're going to talk a little bit about the parts of your brain that play a role in that. One of those things is your cerebellum, which we'll hit later. Your cerebellum helps with your procedural memory, right? How you move or do things, and you don't have to necessarily consciously think about them, you just do them. Okay, declarative is the stuff that you can state. So your episodic and your semantic memory both fit in this declarative category, right? So things that I can tell you that happened versus things that I do, because things that I do is also part of my memory. All right. So with that, I'm going to give you guys a little task to complete here to kind of get us back to this moving things from short-term working memory to long-term memory. So put your pencils down, and I just want you to listen. I'm going to read you a list of words. Then I want you to pause the video and attempt to write down as many of those words as you can remember. Okay? Ballroom, music, step, turn, twirl, bend, hip, hop, waltz, lessons, prom, artichoke, tango, floor, tap, and swing. Now go ahead and pause the video, maybe about a minute or two, and try to write down as many terms as you can recall. So if you are listening to my voice again, it means that you have already written down as many terms as you can remember. I am now going to actually reread you the list, and I want you to check off how many you got right. Okay? Ballroom, music, step, turn, twirl, bend, hip, hop, waltz, lessons, prom, artichoke, tango, floor, tap, and swing. Okay? Go ahead. Count how many little checks you put on your paper. If you need to rewind and re-listen to check them all off, go ahead and do that. Okay? Once you've done that, I want you to pause the video again. And I want you to wait and kind of feel out when the other people at your table are at this same spot. And I want you to compare how many terms you actually got correct. Okay, so once everybody at your table is to this point and you've kind of compared how many you got correct, or you can even compare with people at other tables, that's fine. I want you to try to get a general consensus of how many terms you guys got right. Okay, then you'll restart the video. All right, so I'm assuming you have at least chit-chatted a little bit with a few people to see how many terms you got right. So I might be incorrect, right? And I'm not in class, so I can't do a full class quick survey. But I am assuming that most people that you spoke to got anywhere between 5 and 9 bits of information or words correct. Okay, right? When we talk about short-term working memory, there's this thing called the magic number 7. And the fact that our short-term memory can recall or hold about 7 little bits of information at one time, right? But I have the plus or minus because it's plus or minus 2. And we think about things like the length of your social security number, the length of an average phone number, right? A lot of things fit within that 5 to 7 digits. And that is what is easiest for us to remember is within that digits, okay? Now I want you to look back at your list. I want you to think or see, did you get the words ballroom, music, tap, and swing? I ask you about these words specifically because those were the words that I gave at the beginning of the list and the end of the list. Another important thing to think about when we talk about short-term and working memory is that we do a better job remembering the things at the beginning and at the end, right? You guys know, I think, that I coach the mock trial team, but even in real court, right, you always want to put your strongest witnesses at the beginning and the end and your weakest one in the middle, because that's the one that you don't want to be remembered as much, right? That's just typically how it works, okay? So serial positioning effect, the likelihood that we'll remember the stuff at the beginning and the stuff at the end more than we will remember the stuff at the middle. Next thing I want you to look at your paper. Did you get the word artichoke? I'm guessing that a large portion of you actually got the word artichoke. And again, later you can chit chat with your peers to see who got the word artichoke, right? The reason is because the semantic memory was different. Providing meaning to something matters, right? Semantics are the meaning behind something. All of the words that I gave you dealt with dancing. So when I said artichoke, that meaning was very different than the other words. So you are more likely to have recalled it because it was different, providing extra meaning or context to that term. Last, I had you check off all the words. Go back and look at your list. Did you write the word dance? If so, you should have realized by now, I never said the word dance. But even though I didn't say it, I bet many people in your class actually wrote it on their paper. Okay, the last thing that I want to remind you of today, and we'll come back to this topic, is that your memory reconstruction fails you because all of those other words dealt with dancing. It only made sense when your neurons were trying to put the pieces of the puzzle back together to recall these words in your short-term working memory, that it remembered the word dance because that's what they're all related to. But I never gave you that word. All right. That is all I have for you today, guys. I'm really sorry I had to do this via pre-recorded video instead of live and in class with you. But I shall be back tomorrow, and never fear, there will be more memory tasks, and we'll get to do those together. Till next time, guys. Bye.